Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about what actually happens when you speak up on set. This is a little bit of a tricky topic for me, but I'm gonna be very honest and I'm gonna be very candid because I have my own personal experiences where I've chosen to speak up and it has resulted in a positive outcome, or I've chosen to speak up and it's resulted in a negative outcome, and moments where I've just been silent because I didn't know any better. Sometimes you feel like speaking up might ruffle feathers, and I'm just here to remind you that actually sometimes that might be a good thing. When I talk about speaking up on set, I'm not saying to be loud or dramatic or, create problems. I'm talking about what happens when you clearly and calmly state something that you notice that's happening that's inappropriate. Maybe you are advocating for yourself or you're setting a boundary, and then suddenly the energy shifts. You don't get the callbacks anymore. The camera department might act differently with you, and people just generally get weird. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because it happens a lot and it happens on almost every set, and we don't talk about it enough. When I joined film, the only rule that I had set for myself was I don't want to be the person that gets hired just because I fit in. A lot of people in this industry get rehired because they're easy to work with. And yeah, on one hand, that's not a bad thing until being easy means that suddenly you are tolerating verbal abuse, or you are laughing at some seasoned operator's rude jokes, or you're just a doormat and people can say whatever they feel like they want to say to you. I really don't want to be hired because I'm a doormat. I don't want to be hired because people think that, yeah, she'll be the quiet person that we can just walk all over. I don't want to be hired because people think that whatever they say will just be taken with a grain of salt with me, right? I want to be hired because I bring professionalism to the teams that I'm a part of. I bring a positive energy to the set that I'm on. And above all else, I want to be a part of crew that respects my integrity and not my silence. The next point is for all of the people that are just starting out and maybe you're early on in your journey in film, because I know how easy it is to fall into this trap of thinking that your position or your title might determine your voice, but in reality, I don't really think it does. I think a lot of us get conditioned very early on, just keep your head down, stay quiet, do the work, don't create any waves, especially if you're somebody that is a trainee or, you are a PA and it's your first day on set. And yeah, while I completely agree with that analogy, because first and foremost, you're there to work and be a professional technician, if you see something that's not okay, you should still be able to voice that. And it doesn't matter if you're a PA or you're a utility or you're the trainee. If somebody crosses the line with you, or there's bullying that's happening, or someone that's, said something that's made you feel uncomfortable, or you've witnessed somebody say something to somebody else that's making them uncomfortable, you should feel like you can go to somebody, whether it's in that moment or within your department, or, oftentimes on union sets, there is a HR rep for each production. So there are people and there are resources there for you when you witness things like that. If you're uncomfortable, I think you have the right to speak up about that. Because I feel like when you bottle things up or when you suppress it inside of you and you try to continue on with your day, it actually builds up and it trips you up, and it will just throw you off track, and you're going to be distracted and you're not going to be as focused on your job. And that's not what we're trying to go for. And once you do speak up clearly and in a calm tone, you might start to notice that maybe the room gets a little bit colder. And that brings me to the next part. Lately, I have been showing up very differently around camera crew and just overall, I think, in film. Basically, I'm just starting to be a little bit more clear with what I will and won't tolerate anymore. And I've genuinely noticed that the energy of people shifts around me, and it has shifted around me. The jokes stop, some camera crews get icy, I'm not greeted with the same kind of enthusiasm from people anymore. Suddenly I'm feeling like, a bit excluded from teams. If somebody switches up on you when you state a boundary, they were never really by your side in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody gets uncomfortable with the fact that I'm stating something that is inappropriate and it can't be tolerated anymore, they're making my job easier because they're saving me from the headache of potentially being backstabbed in the future by them, or falling into another trap of a situation where I feel like I have a support system when really I don't. So in moments like that, I take it in a really positive way, and I'm super grateful, because it's like, yeah, on one hand, you're losing out on professional connections, but do you really want a professional connection like that when things get tough or you need support? They really aren't going to be there to support you. Now, look, I do also want to say that I am aware everybody reacts to conflict differently, and I'm not judging that. Some people might freeze. Some people just choose to walk away and they never look back. Some people notice something that's happening and they choose to not insert themselves because they just don't want to get involved. That whole, that whole like ostrich in the sand mentality, like that's what I'm talking about. Like, people will see something happening, but they'll pretend like they are not seeing it happen. And honestly, in a way, I'm not even mad at that, because I think for them, that's probably a mode of self-protection. But if you are the person that's choosing to speak up about something because your gut feeling says that whatever is happening right now and whatever I'm witnessing is not okay, then that moral compass of yours is guiding you for a reason. That choice is inevitably going to shift the people around you. People notice, even if they don't say something to you, internally there is a shift happening. They might adjust how they talk. They might adjust how they treat you or how they behave when they're around you. You might notice that their body language shifts, or you might notice that they keep a distance all of a sudden. And suddenly there's this realization of like, oh, I can't get away if I say this kind of stuff around her. Or, you know what, I really can't say that kind of stuff around him because that's just not going to go well. And that's not a bad thing. It's a very necessary thing. There are so many people that carry, this sense of entitlement on set, like it's a badge of honor for them or something like that. But it's literally based on nothing. No empathy, no leadership. It's just this mentality of, I've been here longer, so I can act this way. And I don't think on film sets today, that kind of mentality is going to fly. I think on-set working environments are so much more different now, and people's views on individuals like that is starting to change quite a bit. And speaking of set culture, I've actually had to experience that dynamic in one of the most trickiest scenarios firsthand. We work in a collaborative and a creative environment where people become close really fast. You start to have a lot of shared experiences that you go through together. The hours that you're spending with people, you really start to feel like a family after one point. It's like a sense of community. But if I'm being really honest, I think some people also use that closeness as a cover. They almost like manipulate it and they blur the boundaries, and they use that casual, comfortable vibe to make certain comments or power trip, but they do it in a way that flies under the radar. So you might think, is that actually what's happening? Or am I just overthinking? I think if you're getting that feeling of, is this happening or am I tripping? Trust that it's actually happening, and that's your gut trying to tell you like, hey, this person is maybe not as trustworthy, because people have hidden motives. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody that works in film, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody that works in camera or in lighting or grip or whatever, but it's just the truth. Like, sometimes people have different objectives and different motives, and if they see somebody else who's got more of an ambition than they have, it really throws off their ego. It really throws off their own self, and they start to get very, very insecure very, very fast. I mean, I worked with a team once where my self-confidence was at an all-time low, like really bad. My self-esteem was all over the place, and they would make comments that had nothing to do with my work. nothing to do with the professional aspects of the job, but it was more personal and it was more targeted towards me as an individual. And those things genuinely made me question myself at times. And here's the part that got tricky, okay? Somebody on that crew who initially I thought had my back, somebody that I thought I could trust, took that opportunity where they saw that, I was probably at a low point, to actually manipulate me and to brainwash me into doing things that actually weren't beneficial and things that actually weren't positive. Stuff like, maybe you shouldn't start sitting in the camera truck anymore with the rest of the team. I remember at one point this individual even said, if I was you, I wouldn't even say good morning to the camera operators. And that's where I was like, wait, what? Saying good morning is like basic decency. I don't think that if I'm not saying good morning to someone, that's the reason I'm getting bullied. You know what I mean? Like, it just sounded so left field in that moment. I had this like switch that flipped in my head and I was like, you have no clue what you're talking about. And I never interacted with that person. I kept it professional, but I never shared anything more because I was like, this is somebody that clearly is the wrong kind of person to trust on set. When your confidence is low, people are going to gaslight you and people are going to take advantage of that. And that's probably where you might even start doubting your own instincts of how to navigate a situation. And you start letting the wrong kind of voices guide you. And I think in that moment, it showed me you have to know who's really standing beside you, because the real people are not going to treat you like that. The real people are actually going to encourage you to be more confident, and you're just going to start to feel naturally more uplifted around those kinds of people because they will see your positive aspects. And even if they do give you criticism, they're going to give it to you in a way that is constructive and for your benefit in the long term. I want to share something with you guys today. Okay, I was speaking to a friend a couple days ago and she said something to me that is now just forever embedded in my head. This might be a little risky to say, but I'm gonna say it because I think sometimes you need to, voice these things. So anyway, I was speaking to the friend and she said, boys club, right? The boys club isn't a club where if you're a boy, I like you and you're part of the club. It's about who can I get away doing my dirt with? Because that's the reality. The boys club isn't really a club. It's more of like a protection ring. Who can I say the most messed up thing with and get away with it without consequences? Who can I say the really inappropriate below the belt stuff and I know I'm not going to be challenged, right? It's the whole twisted mentality of who's going to have my back because I know what I'm doing is clearly wrong and it's clearly inappropriate behavior and it's not accepted on a professional working set. And that's why I think when you will speak up, people are going to switch on you because you're doing something that makes their comfort zone uncomfortable. Or to what I said earlier, you're kind of threatening their ego. And they get very insecure because all of a sudden someone's challenging them and saying, you can't talk to me that way anymore. Or, what you just said is actually inappropriate, or it might be racist, or it might be sexist or something like that. But guess what? That's not your problem and that's not my problem. That's their problem. And I really wanted to name this as well because I have seen it happen. And it is unfortunately something that is also the reality of the space that we work in. Sometimes people that make these kinds of jokes or create these kinds of uncomfortable set environments are really not the obvious ones. They're another person of color, or, they're another female that you think, wait a second, we're supposed to be on the same team here. What's going on, And it's happened to me before with females. It's happened to me before with the younger people. It's happened to me before with people of color. So I can say all those boxes I've checked off in a sense, but it's really surprising till date. And it's disappointing because when situations like that happen where you experience, bullying from another person of color, you think, we're not using the space in the correct way. And the thing with microaggression too is, unless you are directly in an experience with somebody who's treating you that way, it's so hard to tell that from the outside, because it's in the subtle tactics that people will use. It's in the tone shift, it's in the side eye, it's in the snickering and the laughing with your buddy, or like pointing in your direction. And it sounds very elementary school, it sounds very high school to me, but you would be surprised the amount of times I see someone that's in their mid-50s that's embodying this kind of behavior, right? So it's very unfortunate and disappointing to me. And I'm just like, wow, you should be leading by a completely different example. It's hard because you're looking at these spaces with intention of like unity and support, but instead those people are gatekeeping, or they're mimicking a very oppressive style of leadership or team building kind of experience. Some people like to stay in that zone, and some people I've noticed they genuinely do get happy seeing somebody else frustrated, or they see somebody else not getting opportunities or not succeeding in life. That brings them joy. At the end of the day, you can't change people. I know that, and that's not what I'm trying to do, but I'm just saying that it kind of messes with morale. It messes with professionalism, and it messes with my thought of like, oh my God, I'm just here to do work. Can we just focus on work? Can we just focus on having a good time and maybe getting through the day without me having to worry about like, oh, like this person said this and what did he really mean? And he's pointing in my direction and whispering something to someone, and like, is he talking about me? Or, you know what I mean? Like, all of these things are so unnecessary at the end of the day on set. And nobody should have to experience that. You really need to understand that not everyone's going to support you when you do speak up. And that, I think that's something that I struggle with personally, because I think, oh, you know what, if I speak up, it's okay because I'll have a support system and everything's going to be fine. But what I've realized is not everyone is going to do that, and that's okay. Some people might stop talking to you and they might avoid you. Some people will literally create a fake narrative about you in their mind and then never care to clarify that later on. It's very important to remember that when you do speak up, not everyone's going to stand by you. And that's something that I sometimes internally wonder as well, because initially I don't have a problem speaking up, but there is that little bit of maybe hesitation in my mind of, okay, will I actually have a support system after this, or will I burn my bridges? Because yes, these are all important things and concerns that I want to address, but at the same time, I don't really want to be the person that's just like, you know, getting canceled or not getting called back or not getting hired again. Like, it's a really tricky line to balance, but people have different ways of responding, and people will respond in different ways. You know, sometimes people choose to know the reality of a situation, but they decide they never want to speak to you ever again and they avoid you completely. Some people pretend like it never happened and they act completely oblivious. But then there's a few people who you might hear from, or they might respond with a little bit more of, I want to say like softness. And that could look something like, you know, hey, I noticed that your energy's been off lately. Is everything okay? Or it could just be a simple like, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? Just checking in, something very simple. And those are the people that you want to focus on, because that's your real circle. And it doesn't have to be circle in the sense like you have to be best friends with them, but if you're on a project with some team and you're experiencing a situation like this, but if there's that one person who says something like this to you, or somebody who is there by your side checking in or making sure that you are also having a good day, then that's your support system for that moment and for that scenario, right? So I'm not saying go ahead and be best buddies with that person. You could, it could transpire into a beautiful friendship, but it could also be very situational and very dependent on just that moment. And that's completely okay as well. I think the best thing that you can do is let people show you who they are. And I always say, if somebody switches up on you because you're speaking the truth or you're addressing something that's wrong, they're actually making your job easier because you're gaining clarity without losing anything, and you can just walk away from that situation completely. So with that being said, that brings me to the end of today's podcast episode. I don't even know if I'm going to post this one, to be honest. This was more so just me venting out my inner thoughts, because almost on every set that I've been on, I've noticed this behavior, whether it's within my department or in other departments, and I've seen all kinds of reactions to these situations. But it just makes me wonder, like, as a collective in film, right, we have these discussions of like, yeah, we're moving and we're making changes and we're doing all these things, but the reality is these things are still continuing to happen on set. And when we should be moving at a pace of like 80%, we're really moving at a pace of like 25%. So if you're somebody who has, gotten the cold shoulder, or you've been shut out or blacklisted from a team for these reasons, you're not wrong, and there's nothing wrong that you did. Sometimes people just get uncomfortable because they're not used to somebody taking that step or reacting in that way. You know what I mean? Not everybody has the courage to speak up authentically and with that steadiness and holding their ground with courage and being like, this is wrong and it's unacceptable and I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. Speaking in your truth with a sense of clarity and being firm, but you're being calm about it and you're being gentle about it, so you're not really ruffling feathers. You're just stating, hey, this is wrong and you can't do that anymore, right? And people can't really argue with that. And if they do argue with that, then you know that you're not really the problem. It's just because it's not sitting well with them that they got called out on their bad behavior. So, don't feel like you have to be liked by everybody. You don't feel like you have to be everyone's favorite person on the show or on the team. Keep your standards and definitely speak up when you feel like something's not right, because I think everybody deserves to feel safe at work, and everybody deserves to go into a workspace where they feel like I'm being respected. At the end of the day, no matter what happens and how hectic the days can be and how chaotic the film life can be, you want to be a part of groups and teams that make you feel like you're a part of the team because you're a respected member of the team. I'm going to wrap this up by saying, if you want to be remembered for the right reasons, for your clarity, for your courage, for your positive attitude, for your professionalism, not for tolerating bad behavior. Real crew and real teams will see you for who you are. They just will. The industry has a really beautiful way of aligning you with people who really understand you and people that you work well with. At the end of the day, you will find people that you are gonna collaborate with. They will just see you for who you are without even questioning that, or without having these expectations of you to act a certain way or to behave in a very, different way and be quiet when these kinds of things happen. I think that this platform is for people who work with care and not fear, because fear doesn't lead to anything at the end of the day. You just kind of are stuck in the same loop on your own. And I want to be a part of the shift that has people leading differently, So anyway, if you enjoyed listening to that, then leave a like, leave a comment, or, send me a DM, share some stories that you have experienced, or if you've ever been in a situation like this before. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I appreciate your support, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.